later, I get Costco mailers.
Yeah.
They're of course spying on you. Probably your phone. Is
That's right. Like your
Yeah, I must
phone.
have taken my, I don't know.
It's very bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time with things I say, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was waiting for some intimates. Anyway, that happened to me too. And I get home and John's like, "Are you shopping for bras?" It's like, yeah. And he's like, "It's all over our Amazon." It's like, I was just I was like physically at the store.
You ever have a thing where you think of something?
No, I-
and tell people,
Yeah, I
"Oh,
know.
freaking marketing, what's he nothing to think?" I'm not, you've done that to me, it's incredible.
It was random, was like, upset. Like a new one.
Well, let me just, who else wants to be here?
Well,
Or
we
they
have
Zoom.
two that are probably jumping in Zoom any minute here. Everybody else is in there, and Maya joins the.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good. And Roberto?
I'm Roberto, correct.
Yes.
So let's do a sound check, see if they can hear us talking through here. And can you see me on the video?
There were schools.
So what all do you see?
So just have this.
Do you have a?
Where?
Oh, there was business school that did it?
Here?
No, it was somewhere. I could look it up, but it was.
Yeah.
The person was
People see that one.
or something, it was business school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just blurring out the background.
Yeah, so sorry, we want to see this. I don't know why it's so easily. I mean,
It was just sharing content.
Yeah. Yeah, that,
Sorry.
okay. And then if you just want to do a quick chat through the chat or something, make sure everybody can hear us okay on Zoom.
Do you need mine? No echo or anything like that?
Yeah, don't turn yours on because mine should be up. So if you just want to like type in the chat or.
They all heard, they said yes.
Okay, great. That should be good. Are we ready to start?
Yeah, where's LinkedIn?
Oh,
Start with please.
yeah, we can do that. Why don't we do a welcome and then give Clint. Does that sound good? All right. Well, welcome. I am Daniel Baird, part of the Tech Writing Committee and a professor in English here. So we like to welcome everyone here. Before we get started with the English 2100 training, we have Clint Gardner, who's from the Student Writing and Reading Center, who would like to give just a little announcement about that. So Clint, please.
Is the camera right there? Thank you, Daniel. I'm Clint Gardner, and the Student Writing and Reading Center is actually open to all Salt Lake Community College students. That includes concurrent enrollment students. We actually do see quite a few, work with quite a few, don't see them. We work with quite a few of English 1010 and 2010 students from various concurrent enrollment programs. I just wanted to take the opportunity to let you know that the Student Writing and Reading Center is open to your students, and usually students, concurrent enrollment students, will make use of our online tutoring, specifically our written feedback process. But we do actually have online live appointments as well that students could take advantage of. We usually have folks available throughout the day into the evening. We have weekend hours too, Saturdays and Sundays. But like I said, a lot of times concurrent enrollment students will make use of the written feedback. And our the URL, I don't know if you can put it in the chat there, if you got a chat, Daniel. The URL to get to us, we don't have it, is www.slcc, that's an L, not a C. That's right, swc.org. And that will take you to the Student Writing and Reading Center's website. You could also just go to the SLCC.edu and search Student Writing and Reading Center, and it'll take you eventually to this website. But this is the tutoring platform where students can take advantage of our services. Yeah, and we do have tutors who have training for working specifically with tech writing students as well. And we have faculty who teach in the tech writing program who also work in the Student Writing and Reading Center. Cool. And if you have any questions, let me give you my email address. put that in the chat too. It's quinn.gardner@slcc.edu and Gardner, Gardner. No E or I in there. Cool. Well, I'm gonna go back downstairs then.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Clint. So again, for all of you who are joining us, welcome to this training for the English 2100 technical writing. I'm going to get us started out here just talking a little bit about why we do this course in general in Utah and here at SLIC, and why we're excited that you guys are going to be offering it for concurrent enrollment. So you notice here in the green box, I've just kind of thrown in the entire description from the course catalog. But below it, I've kind of broken that out. Really, what we're trying to do is separate out from 2010, which we kind of see as being more humanities and associated majors oriented, the type of writing they do. Whereas in this technical writing course, we're not training you to become a technical writer. We're training you to learn the skills of writing and design in professional and technical fields. So STEM is the big one, right? Science, technology, engineering. Traditionally, it's been math, but I like to say medical fields because we have more of that. The health sciences. Most of our applied sciences are a one-year degree, so they don't take a second or a 2000 level English course, but some do. So occasionally you'll get like non-destructive testing or something in here. And then social sciences, social work's a big one that we get a lot. Computer and engineering science, get a lot of those. Some business. People will come over here if they have any technical area or expertise that they're combining with their business fields. So we really try and gear this more towards these majors and for students to be able to have what they need as a tool as they go into their profession. I also just briefly want to touch on the course learning outcomes. Now, Yushi gives us our general education writing outcomes that we're required to cover in our class. So, I leave that, to you in your classes teaching how much you feel your students are prepared to know this information. But I do want to point it out so that you are aware of what it is that this entire course has been built around. The knowledge, skills, and abilities you acquire by taking the course. And I point out here that it doesn't matter if you take 2010 or 2100, both of them fulfill the Gen Ed writing. So if you take it at SLIC, take it concurrent, transfer, say, to the University of Utah, it fulfills that Gen Ed. What it does not fulfill is any upper division writing courses that might be required by the major. But it is mandated. This course will transfer to all Utah public schools. Okay, so when we look at these learning outcomes, we talk about context and purpose. We're looking at our rhetorical situations, how to adapt to audience purpose, etc. Genre awareness. In 2010, there's very different genres that you do. Some creative writing, some practical, persuasive writing. In this one, our genre awareness we tend to teach is how does that look like? Format, the form of writing and technical writing is often as important as the content. And if you get the format wrong, it gets rejected. Anybody who's served in the military definitely knows that one, right? Sources and evidence. So, typically MLA is what you may be used to. Some of you might have ventured out of MLA into APA, but in our course, we actually ask the students to research what is used in their career field and learn how to do that. Language awareness of usage, so that they can use the correct language for the audience. Recursive writing process, the fact that it takes drafting, research, revision, things like that. And then we have an additional outcome here, which is, your reflection, the effectiveness of how you compose based on purpose, audience, and context. So you will see that in the textbook, you will see it in the Canvas purpose, audience, context. That's just what we drill into our students' heads. We do have a time for question and answers at the end. So if you just want to save that, you can drop them in the chat, or at the end, we can go over those. Next, what I'd like to do is introduce my colleague, Andy. She is also a professor here in the English Linguistics and Writing Studies Department. She'll go over the Canvas shell and introduce you to one of the two major projects, which is the writing project. So please.
Hello, Andy Maloof. So I want to talk a little bit about the writing project and how the course will, where this fits in with the course. So the first week, we really talk about technical writing and help them understand, the students understand what some of what Daniel was talking about. So you can see that here in the modules. But then we start the writing project. Where are we? Sorry, this is a new shell. I'm so used to the old shell. So just to give you a heads up, we have a shell that we've been working on and we're creating a new one so it coordinates a little better with the other composition courses. So there is a module dedicated to the writing project, so it's easy for students to find what they need. And the overview is a space where they return to often because the writing project takes place over several weeks. So the writing project, the goal of the writing project is to help students to write, again, like Daniel said, not so much, not even just about the content, but learning to write in different kinds of ways. So using different kinds of containers or genres. So the writing project is, again, deciding topic, audience, and genre, but also purpose. So students have the choice of writing either within, I'm going to go to the overview of topics first, choices for topics first, and then I'll go back and talk about how these play out throughout these several weeks. So students have a choice of working with writing a report. So this container, the genre for this is a report style. And the report style is based on something that they're interested in, a career field that they're interested in, or a major that they are aware of or wanting to pursue. So they're learning how to write a technical report, and they're doing research on the kinds of things they might be doing later in life, should they choose this field, right? So students like this a lot because they don't know, and I would assume high school students might be in this boat. They don't really completely know everything about what they know. They're interested in engineering, but they don't really know maybe everything engineers do. So some students will make it very finite and maybe do just civil engineering, or some will look at kind of the field of civil engineering. But they're asked to look at also what a day in a life is like for someone in that field, what it would take to get into that field, what kind of education is needed. So lots of different ways that they can explore this. In this, we ask them to also do an interview. So I'll talk about this when I show you kind of the various steps. And students really like this. And we have some questions about interviews, but students will interview someone in that field, and that person will often send them to other spaces of research for them to look into. So that's option one. The second option, and I would say for my students, I don't know about Daniel and Melissa, I would say about 60% of the students do the writing, the option one, the technical report. This semester, I'm having a lot of students do their sample career document. These are students who maybe know their field, know their major, they're within their major, and they're creating a document that exists in this profession or in this field, right? So I'll give you some examples. I had a student who is in mining, was a mining major and actually worked at a mine, and decided to do a set of instructions for the sample career document, a set of instructions for how to use this heavy machinery. His boss loved it. They used it as part of their their handbook. And then I'll talk to you about, then when he did the design project, he actually took that topic and made a video, and it became part of their onboarding process, right? So students are using the sample career documents oftentimes for very practical reasons. I'm having a student right now doing a scientific report. He's in geology, and it's going to be presented at UVU in 2 weeks. So super excited that this whole semester he's just been able to focus on that kind of writing. So we give options for students to think about in different fields. And I'll be honest, I was just telling my colleagues every semester I say I'm going to update this with more fields, more disciplines. But for right now, we have ideas for the sciences. They might write a field study. They might write a grant proposal. I've had students do journal articles for trade publications. And one student actually submitted for his to be published. I don't know if it has, but they're seeing kind of the practical space of where this would live. So we talk a lot about genre. Part of their research for this is I may not know what this document looks like. I've never written a field study myself, right? So they have to go find examples of it and talk to people who have written it, written something like that. So you get to see a lot of different things. Our health science students end up doing a lot of SOAP reports. But you can imagine that this list could be longer. So if students don't see themselves within this list, you might help them to imagine what they might want to do with it. So we will be working with, like I said, architecture and social sciences to get some other examples. And then the third option that they have is to do work with civic engagement. So we are a civically engaged department, meaning a student can get an English major and with taking all civically engaged courses. So they work in the community. Oftentimes they work with community partners that we have kind of not chosen, but we have a list of community partners that might want some writing done, right? So they'll actually be doing service by writing something for them or creating something. Is that fair for how you have taught it? Okay. I would say only about 10% of students in my class choose this option. I think you have more students that do civic engagement. So
Especially when
yeah, that's the other part. And this is something when we talk about the interview and civic engagement, that might change for high school, right? Because there are different
I think we agreed for the
policies.
first year we wouldn't provide the civic engagement, so we did, yeah, we talked
Okay.
about that, so we never fully said it was out, we said it was probably most likely not a good idea this first go around.
Okay.
For them to do that, just for extra legwork before they get their feet under them.
Okay, so what we'll do with the dev site is maybe create another dev site where that's taken out and the language throughout these modules is kind of stripped from that, so there's not confusion. Let me put that on our to-do list. Okay, so I'm scrolling back up to show you the iterative process of the writing project, right? So we have these cards here that talk about different steps. So students will write a proposal. So every piece of the building block assignments, they're also learning how to write in other genres too, that will be part of their professional world someday, possibly. So they're learning how to write proposals. They're writing a proposal to the instructor about their project, and they're thinking through that proposal or thinking through that project with outline a timeline, right? And the resources that they're going to need and the interview. They then work on many different drafts, the outline, there's a first draft, there's a second draft, there's more peer review. So peer review is built into this project and is very important in this project. Students tell me they get a lot out of it. And then the main project for us is not due till the end of the semester. So students aren't feeling that pressure of one and done. They know that they have the whole semester to work on it. And this morning when I was teaching, one of my students got really excited because she said her design project, actually, because she was doing a similar topic, actually it is making it so she's going to redo many things, revise many things in her writing project. It almost helped her to kind of distill the thoughts. So that's one of the reasons we also keep the main deadline at the end. But by the time that happens, I will have seen it as an instructor three times, I think, at least two to three times, and then at least 2 peer reviews. So those are the building block projects. The other part of the writing project is an interview, and as I mentioned, they interview a professional in their field. I don't know what that would look like in a high school setting and what the rules are. So we wanted to just bring that up as something that we could discuss maybe in the Q&A.
I don't know if there are too many rules associated with it.
Okay.
We still have students conducting interviews in other classes, and they do that sometimes in 10 to 2010.
Okay,
So it would still be okay for them to do it.
okay,
Maybe just a little more logistically complicated because they're in school.
Yeah.
All day long, but it'd still be possible. I can still figure that out.
okay, all right. And one of the things I suggest to my students, I mean, if it feels safe, but sometimes my students will just interview somebody in higher ed, right? And so if that's, a professor in that field, then they're not having to go knock on the door of a corporation and try to get the CEO on the phone, right?
A lot of different models for them.
So whether it's face to face, email, phone call.
Hmm.
And I had one that interviewed a CERN scientist, in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Obviously, so
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Um, okay, what else can I tell you about the writing project? If I missed anything? Did I get it all? Oh, yeah, we can do that too. So in each of these modules, we have the building block assignments, as I called them. They're called either applied practices. Let me show you in the module. Oh, where did I go? Writing project. Okay. So every week they're doing a couple different things. At the beginning of every module, there's a reading quiz. They're going to be doing things like working with a librarian on how to do their research. And then there's the scheduling and then the applied practices. So these applied practices are meant to help the student create pieces of their project, right? Reminds them to, let's think about your audience. Let's think about what your audience knows, and then they respond to that. So there's a mix of applied practices and a mix of discussions, and then at the beginning of every module, there's a quiz. So students, it's important to help students stay on track. It's not just one or two things a week. Sometimes it can be 3 things a week, right? And they get a little, for me anyway, my students get a little panicky when they see that module and go, oh, look at all these assignments. When in reality, some of them are just a couple sentences or, doing an accessibility on an image, something that's not big. Others are bigger. So helping students kind of keep up with that daily or the weekly work is important. What else can I say about applied practice? And the other thing I'll say about the applied practices, as Daniel mentioned, helping students to write within certain formats. They resist this a little bit. So we'll have them write in tables, right? Like here is a table and in this column you write this column you write that. And inevitably you get 5 or 6 that are still written in paragraph style. And when you tell them you have to write it in the table, they're like, why? Well, because in many professions, you're going to have to learn to write in certain formats. So by the end of the semester, they're very used to writing in different ways and putting writing visually together in different ways. So I'll just kind of scroll through so you can kind of see what that workload looks like. And then at the end of every module, there's a reflection on that module. And I'll turn the time over to my colleague, Melissa, about the design project. And again, a lot of students will stick with the same topic with their writing project and design project, but they don't have to. So I also have some business cards and I think Pace put that in the chat.
Take some scans while everybody's going.
Sure. Oh,
third tab is the modules, the fourth tab is just the design project.
Okay, perfect,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
right. I asked you to set that up and I didn't.
So hi, I'm Melissa Hellquist. So now going into this design project, you'll notice that the look and feel is different. This is the old module, so design will change. We just haven't got to that point yet. So instead of the cards that Andy was showing you, in the previous one, now we have this table. So just FYI, it's going to look like the previous. So with the design project, the focus is on communicating through design components, primarily visual, although I don't know if you guys have students who bring in other design elements like audio, but mostly visual design. And along with this similar process to the writing project in that students create a proposal to say what they want to do, who their audience is going to be. Like Andy was saying, that allows students to have some flexibility in terms of what they want to learn and areas that they want to explore. So like we were talking about architecture before this, and I've had students create design specs for something. So that's one example. But a lot of students will do less technical design documents, so an infographic, things like that. So it's kind of open for students to kind of take it in a direction that they want to go. And we do have here some examples. These are just kind of general ideas depending on the area they're interested in. And then there are also, we have throughout this a lot of student examples. So, here's a few, it's kind of small, but brochure, a video, a poster. So, yeah. What are some other things that your students have done that?
I was gonna say,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, design specs, video, make PSAs.
Yeah.
If they do a presentation, I have them write a script to go with it, like if they do a PowerPoint to a very specific audience, so.
Students in my class do instructions, so that's another option. And I found students really like doing that. I don't know. Okay, so let me go to the modules here. So one thing that with this design project, the focus is pretty simple design. So Andy mentioned CRAP principles, which I found out that's used also for source evaluation. Like my students were like very confused.
But
Yeah.
two are in that one.
In the source evaluation or the design, yeah. So a different CRAP, if you use CRAP for source evaluation in your classes, this is a different one. Which just kind of helps students think about very basic principles of design, right? Our goal is not to teach anyone how to be a designer, but just how to think about how design helps communicate ideas clearly. So the design CRAP is, I'm gonna conflate, because in my class, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. So those are the four. So just really, and we have a lot of resources that kind of show examples of that, but it's really just to help students think about, okay, if you're using headings in a document, you want to have some repetition in the heading style so that your readers can understand where key ideas are, or you want to make sure that you're aligning text so you don't have like 5 different focal points on a page, right? So very basic principles. So in terms of for students and for teaching this, it really is not about, you don't have to feel like as a teacher you have to be a designer. It's just common sense design principles. And giving students some room to explore. So in this module, there are a few things that we've integrated to kind of with the applied practice assignments that may be new. So one is basic accessibility. So helping students to understand how information is consumed differently by different individuals with different devices. So I'll just show you a couple of assignments. So this is just like a brief introduction to accessibility, and then students explore accessibility either in terms of a building or digital media. So I'm going to watch, as an example, Max currently has a big ASL program. So you can watch a lot of their shows with ASL interpretation. So that's an example, right? A student could watch their favorite show with ASL interpretation and write about the impact of that. So it's just about understanding that there is this thing called accessibility. And then they do a bit of practice. And Andy mentioned one of those, which is writing a text description for an image. Or they can play around with captions, or they can make an accessible document in Word. I find that students really like exploring accessibility. Most students who are on social media have worked with some accessibility features just because they're built into a lot of platforms now. The reason that we integrate this is, one, it helps students understand the different ways of making meaning. So especially with a design project, it helps students think about how meaning might be made through text, through image, through all of these different features, which accessibility just naturally foregrounds. And then also, if there is connecting it with the profession, most technical writing, the requirement now is accessibility for a couple of reasons. The US, the Department of Justice recently sort of did a broader scale assertion about the need for accessibility, which we'll see how that stays. But also the EU has just passed a pretty large scale accessibility act. So most companies have offices everywhere. And so even if the US, if our accessibility laws fade a bit, it's still going to be part of the profession because of laws in other countries. So those are kind of the reasons we do accessibility. This is might be new to some of you. If it is new and it feels overwhelming, email me. As my colleagues know, I love to talk about accessibility, and so I would gladly spend some time with you. And like I said, students really, I don't know what have you found with? Yeah.
They love it. One of the assignments is to explore a building for accessibility.
Yeah.
And they end up doing it like continually.
For a bunch of buildings, yeah.
Not just for the assignment. So.
Yeah.
It does get built into the design project itself, so.
Yeah.
Once they've learned it.
They can add those, yeah. And then the other part is usability, which I often introduce to students as a different version of peer review, because that helps them connect to it. And this also I find students really like. They just, and again, this is within the technical writing profession, a key part of how documents and products are produced. So it helps them kind of dip into this new form of writing in the professions. But the usability test plan is they just have to come up with a simple test. Like, I want to know if the headings in my document are easy to read. There's one example. And so they'd come up with a way to test that, right? So maybe they're going to do like A/B testing and give, their friends like version A and version B, and then ask questions to get feedback about it. That's one example, right? So thinking about who might interact with their document and creating a test to get that feedback. Do you guys have any examples of usability tests that you've seen your students do that?
I had one just, yeah, we just did this.
Yeah.
Took different age groups, which was really interesting. Everyone didn't fare so well.
Yeah.
But so, but I had to say, well, why would you want to do are all ages going to use this kind of? And that was a question. Was,
Yeah.
Maybe not, right? And
Yeah.
so it wasn't. I mean, it was interesting for the student, but it didn't produce the results that may have been helpful for the document. But
Right.
the process was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah, just a wide variety.
Yeah.
Some people use
Lot.
like design project, others like, test things on kids.
Yeah.
Like set age range, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this assignment has this part of the module has two goals, I think. One, to potentially give them some feedback that they can use for their design project, right? But also to just help them understand that technical writing does things in the world, and part of understanding how it does things in the world is understanding how users connect with that content and kind of shaping content with the user in mind. And even though we talk about audience in other classes, and I know my students have heard about audience, for me, this assignment really helps them sort of crystallize this idea about the audience. It's not an abstraction anymore. They're thinking about real people, and really thinking about that interaction between people and documents. So,
One example.
yeah.
I find that the students who kind of bring in the accessibility with the usability are the ones who have really interesting results. So I've had a lot of students, and I think it's because I suggest it, because my husband's colorblind, but they will test out documents with people who are colorblind
Yeah.
or have maybe certain disabilities and see how the document
Yeah.
works for those, because in every workplace, there's probably somebody who's colorblind, somebody who, right, maybe has a version of dyslexia. So
Yeah.
I found that really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, the usability testing, from my perspective, it's really empowering for students because it helps them kind of think about their writing as something that has a connection to people and isn't just going into Canvas, never to be seen again. So, anything else that you want me to add with the design?
Yeah.
And then Daniel is going to talk about our textbooks. Yes.
We need to talk about the ethics assignment. I guess it's just one.
Oh,
Okay.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, no worries. Let me go back to here. So in the modules, before I talk about the textbooks, I just wanted to point out a couple of things about this. One, we've designed these course Canvas development shells with the idea that they can be used either online or in person. So when you see this, you could run the whole thing entirely online. But when I teach it in person, what I do is I look at these assignments like the applied practices or the discussions, and I determine, is this better in the classroom or is this better as homework? And a lot of the applied practices, especially, I will choose to at least start them in the class so students get comfortable with what they're doing before I send the homework. Others I'll do completely in class. Same thing with the discussions. I'll kind of choose, which ones look like good homework, which ones, look like great discussions in class. The ones she just mentioned here, I went right by it. Is thinking about ethics. So in the online version, it's an online discussion. But if you bring that into the classroom, that can take a couple of classes and students really get into the discussion. It asks you, it gives you a set of ethical dilemmas that you might encounter in the workplace. And then you have to decide, what am I going to do? So the student makes the decision and then they have to defend that decision. We give them kind of a way to think through that decision. Is there any ethics in your workplace that would control that, an ethical board or something like that? Then they have to go do research and figure that out and bring it back and defend their answer. So there's a lot of flexibility in these assignments of how you introduce them and how that you bring them in their classroom. But I just wanted to point this out that when you look at this, it looks like it's all designed for online. Well, that's because it is. But you can go through and decide which ones you want to start away. So we've talked about the first three modules, the introduction to technical writing. So here's your quiz. What is technical writing? It is using clear and concise language to convey information to other people, usually with the idea that they'll take that information and make a decision with it, some type of action. So that's one of the ways we talk about what we are teaching with technical writing. Writing project, design project, and then we're required, at the college to do portfolios. I don't know if you do that at the high school. We do. Okay, good. So that's pretty much what the last module is about, is professional portfolio, designing that, putting that together. That's also where employment materials are. For those of you who are teaching this high school, usually your semesters might be longer than what we have at college. So there are places like this where employment materials is really designed for 1 or 2 classes, but it's something that's very easy to expand into more. And then at the end of the module, we even have optional materials and things like that. So that is one way to expand your class, is just taking more time with some of the information. You'll find that some topics, they take a little bit longer, whereas because this was online 16 weeks, it's 1 week, 1 class period for some of these things. Let's move on to the textbooks. Now, when we designed this class, the first thought we had is we wanted to make this free textbooks. So the online educational resources, we found this Oregon, online Open Oregon, the technical writing book. And so we designed the course around this textbook. And so as you go through the course, you're going to become very, very familiar with this textbook. I'll just give you a brief overview. Professional communication, so that's going to be week 1, week 2. Audience analysis you do with both projects. You write a proposal with both projects. Information literacy is one of those optional things that you can expand and talk a lot about, or not so much. Citations and plagiarism. So we talked about how students go and they learn how to do citations in their own career field. And then we can talk about plagiarism and research, good research in there. Progress reports. This one I have done in the past. It doesn't really show up in our Canvas, but sometimes I'll put in a progress report assignment like halfway through the writing project and say, give me a progress report. Where are you at on your writing project? What's left to be done? So those are progress reports are something that you could very easily insert into your class if you need, an extra day or 2 to teach. Outlining, you do that with the writing project. Creating and integrating graphics, that's part of the design project. Ethics, we've already mentioned, design project. Technical reports. So if they do option number 1, a lot of people maybe won't know their career field, or they want to explore that career field. So chapter 10's, the way you do things in chapter 10 is kind of like the default of how to write. And so, that gives you an example. And so I send students to this a lot to say, write in this style. However, with the writing project, I will show you, we have, where is it? Where's the resources one? Oh, maybe it's not. Give me a second while I pull this up. So under the writing project, you have the writing project instructions, which sets you up with, project 1 or I mean, option 1 or option 2 that we talked about. The other thing I was looking for is, why do I not see it? Is it under readings? I may have changed it in my version. Yeah, okay, so you have readings by major. And so if they're doing option 1 or option 2, this becomes very helpful. In option 1, when they do a career report and I know that they're going into sciences, I say, please read how you would format a science report. If you go into engineering, IEEE, well, that's a 2-column format instead of a single column format. So I have them look at what that is. And that's what this assignment here, the readings for the writing project, get you started. So readings by major, you can go through and they can kind of pick, and you notice there's several under engineering, health and science. So what we found is when we were going through this Oregon textbook, it only had this one way of doing the writing project. And so we created a second textbook called Technical Writing at Slick, very original, right? And we started creating these alternate formats. So one of the things we bring in that's also in module 1 and into module 2 with the writing project is the writing process, teaching students how to think about going through a writing process. So you have that chapter to go through. And then based on their major, they can do writing in the sciences, writing in the engineering, writing in computer sciences. Those are the chapters we have so far to give them specific examples, especially if you're doing the scientific format. Now, Andy mentioned earlier that sometimes we have them write in tables. You go in, you do your research, and you write your research in the left column, and you write your comments and thoughts about your research in the right column. That actually comes from the scientific format because you have to separate that out. Students are used to writing typically a paragraph where you put the evidence and your explanation of the evidence in the same paragraph, but that doesn't happen in the scientific format. So we have this set out, and all of these chapters were co-written with somebody over in STEM or computer science to help us write these. So if you notice, Introduction to Writing and Sciences is set up in the scientific format. Scientific format is introduction, methods, results, and discussion of results. So you see there is a subchapter for each one of those. This is one of the harder things I think students, as they have to learn to completely think about how they present evidence. But if they've ever taken a chemistry class or something like that and had to do a lab report, they have to do lab reports in the scientific format. So as soon as they make that connection that you can do it, a lab report the same as you do a research report, then it kind of makes that connection. So that's what our technical writing a slick textbook is, to fill in these gaps and give us information in these areas that we're heading, a lot of going into sciences, engineering, computer science. We also didn't like the amount of information under citation and copyright plagiarism, so we added a whole lot more, right? So this is really good, like the copyright images, audio, and video. Not only do we talk about what it is, but we give them some resources to go find copyright-free material that they could use in their projects. I assume my colleagues do as well, but I really come down hard on students if they just copy and paste pictures and stuff from the internet, because that's under copyright. And if you do that in a company, you could get sued, fired, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one way to really help students understand that you need written permission for something under copyright, unless you go to these copyright-free sites that I've just provided you. So makes it easier that way. We have this wonderful chapter here on corporate culture and how people change their writing strategies with that. There is, we're not going to do civic engagement apparently this year, but there is that. And then there is one I find very important is project planning. A lot of students, when they come into technical writing class, they don't know how to create a project calendar and figure out what are the steps needed. Now, you've noticed Andy talked about the scaffolding. They do the applied practice assignments, and that helps them build the necessary skills in order to complete either the writing or design project. But I've found that when they do the proposal at the beginning of each of those modules, they have to come up with a project calendar. And this chapter here kind of teaches them what's important about that project calendar. Sometimes I do those, like the design project or especially the civic engagement projects, as a team project. So this also gives you resources to talk about how you do that as a team, how do you have effective meetings, etc. So these are some of the supplemental materials we have pulled into this. I think before we go into the question and answers, I've mentioned a couple of things you can do to fill out the extra weeks. Andy, Melissa, do you have anything that you wanted to say about how they can expand from basically our 15-week format into something longer?
I think in the design project, like I mentioned, other forms of design, like audio, video, which are not necessarily the focal point of what we do, but if that was an area of interest for your students or for yourself, I think you could have some of those elements, like I'll do some user experience with audio and kind of guide students through some basic audio editing. So that's one example of how you can bring in a little more in that design project.
Yeah, I agree with Melissa. She's talking about how streamlined the Canvas course is, but if you take some of those assignments and work it out, you can look at the different aspects. For instance, in our accessibility, they have an option to do this or this, but in the classroom, you can have them actually do all of the options, and that way they get a better understanding of accessibility. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah.
We do, and students really like it. We do professional presentations of their design project. That can take up a couple days. But we talk about what it means to present in a professional arena. We do a lot of student projects in academia, but I don't know if we, like, how do you present yourself and how do you present the work and why would you be doing a presentation, right, for someone? Like, what do you want them to do with your document? So they kind of pretend like the rest of the classroom is a body that will say yes or no to something. And they have to somehow convince them to adopt their design project. And they really like it because they love seeing all the work that everyone has done.
yeah.
They've spent so much time with the design and they're really proud of it. So
Yeah, I do that, the same thing, you know, when I'm teaching in the classroom, you know, last week or 2 weeks or something, the student presentations. And they like it because they can share what they've done, but they also have an extra 2 weeks to work on the final version of these projects before they turn it in. So yeah, that's really good. So thank you, Andy. Anything else?
One thing
Yeah,
about the textbook.
yeah.
I don't know if you have this, maybe it's just maybe I just need to be more clear, but sometimes when the students go to the Oregon textbook, they'll click on a chapter and it'll only have the intro and they forget where it's not,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not obvious that they need to click on the plus sign. So they're like, that was really short chapter. I love that.
Yeah, so all the chapters have these sub things. So if you go to professional communications, you're like, wow, that's incredibly short. You have to go to 1.1, which is texting, 1.2, which is email, 1.3. So yeah, you definitely have to remind students that they need to read all of the sections of a chapter. Yes.
Student midterm. It's like, oh man.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else? Are we good to go on to question and answer time? So why don't I have you moderate that since you have the chat? Is there questions you feel would be, you know, either coming up a lot or whatnot? And I and my colleagues can take turns just to, you know, deal with that.
James Hurst said, I teach CE and like students to leave high school job ready. What materials and assignments are provided for the job docs assignments at the end of the module in week 15, he thinks? And what information is provided for online sites like LinkedIn?
Okay, yeah.
I'd say with the employment materials, so
Sure.
the documents are a resume and a cover letter.
But they're not just creating the documents, they're really thinking deeply about the audience. So we have them look at 2 job postings that they may be interested in. They don't have to apply for the job, but they have to look at them. And then we do a bit of analysis on those job listings. And we say, okay, what is the person asking? What kinds of qualities do you think? And then how can you echo that in the cover letter? We also spend a lot of time just showing the differences between the resume and the cover letter. They do 2 different things, right? And we talk about who is sitting in a desk with like 20 of them. What do you think is going to get their attention? And how do these 2 things operate together as documents? And so they really like it, and it really helps that they are that their audience is based on these 2 job postings because it gives them some real meat to address. So it's not just one resume they turn in and not just one cover letter. They actually are, for me anyway, they usually turn in 2 because they're having to revise based on what is expected for each job posting.
And I might mention too that earlier on, there is an assignment that asks them to research what professional publications and associations, websites are associated with their career field. So it's already kind of getting them thinking about, okay, if I wanted to go in that career field, where would I find the resources? And most of these websites have the job listings that they could go to do that. You mentioned LinkedIn in there. For me, LinkedIn is an extra credit assignment. If they want to go create that profile, it's extra credit. Next question.
Or did you have something to
Did
add?
you?
I guess just one thing, like with the accessibility piece that we do, I think there's another tie-in for the job market because a lot of current job processes work with text scanning. And so if students can understand how text works as an object in a way, I think accessibility helps with that so they can understand I need to have these keywords so that the AI that scans this resume is going to be able to recognize that content quickly so I don't get put in the slush pile. And so with accessibility is primarily about people with disabilities, but I think it helps to have talk about those other features so that the principles are clearer and can be applied in a range of ways. So, that idea.
Do you have any other questions in the chat?
Don't have any other questions? So any other questions? Did you have a question?
I'm curious about how or whether you guys use any AI.
Good question. So she's asking about AI in the course. I'm actually over the summer going to write an introduction to AI and kind of put that into some of the assignments where we feel it might work. I don't know what their opinions are, but I think AI is here. It's not going to go away. It's the calculator for writing, right? So my idea is we need to teach students how to use it properly, what to look out for, things like hallucination, where it makes up facts, makes up sources, and really learn, what's the appropriate and inappropriate. And then we also emphasize that anything the AI creates, you need to cite as a source. It's not your own writing. And that's so important, is to tell the reader what's your own ideas, what somebody else's ideas, where'd the writing come from. So does that answer your question? All right, thank you.
Yeah, students, they do, it is definitely a meaningful conversation. Because students do struggle a little bit with, well, it was my words that I was putting into the system, so why can't I just have it all AI paper, right? And we do have a code of conduct that includes AI, and so we kind of talk about that and why an entire paper written in AI is the form of plagiarism. But it also goes well with that ethics section too. I think, to think of it as part of that. Maybe we should do an AI ethics dilemma.
I think we could integrate it into that discussion pretty easy. Thanks for the idea.
Okay, that's it for questions.
That's it.
If I can address them all.
Please do.
Do you have a question, Sheree?
Okay, so where we're at now is everyone has done now the English 2100 training. Hold on one sec. Oh, you
Maybe,
guys take your time.
maybe. Why is it not going back to the meeting? I just thought I'd bring the. Oh, there it is.
Okay. So we've done the 2100 training. That'll be recorded in your instructor qualifications for 2100 moving forward. That goes through my CE. I will send out the electronic version of the stipend form for everybody that attended the meeting online. Just complete that as quick as you can and send it back to me, and we'll get you paid for the training. Most of you, many of you, also are 1010 and 2010 teachers. So that's an independent training, and that happens the first week of May on Wednesday. And that one has to be completed as well for the qualifications for 1010 and 2010. So you guys are kind of doubling down a little bit right now. So please make sure you attend that other training. I'll be sending out more training reminders for that. And there's different independent stipend forms for that as well. So it sounds like the course is kind of in process of being finalized and completed. So you guys have the version right now that is loaded into your Canvas. I will work on getting the finalized version of the course as soon as I can when that's completed, either at the end of the year or over the summer. And then I will send out the newest version of that and be very clear that that's what you guys should be working with as you lock in to hopefully present this to your students in the fall.
We're shooting for July 1st to be completely
Okay.
done with the new versions.
So shooting for July 1st. So after that time, then I'll make sure you guys get that. Luckily, there aren't too many of us in here, so it's pretty easy to communicate. There's a lot more 1010 and 2010 instructors. So we can make sure that we have all that stuff. And if you guys have questions or anything like that, you can always send them to me. I'll also be sending out the contact information for the people on the 2100 team. So if you have a question, you can also reach out to them directly as well. Yeah. Okay. Let me make sure there's nobody else in the chat.
Looks like we're good. Okay. I guess we just say goodbye.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for attending, and you get some more emails from me in that stipend form, and I will talk to you guys later on.
Any recording? Do we need to hit a button?
We can do that to kind of. You want it? So we know how I was promoting the one should be at the other fields.
Great.
Nancy said, thank you very much.
Yeah, that helped with a couple of things there.